It's July 9th, 1993, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
So it's 7 p.m. on the 9th of July 1993, and if you're sitting down of an evening for some televisual entertainment, you have these choices. On ITV, a repeat of Through the Keyhole. On BBC Two, you can join in for the final quarter of the 1956 film The Beast of Hollow Mountain. And on BBC One, the final episode of the BBC's costliest ever flop, the soap opera Eldorado. It was ending after just 1 year, and it had been commissioned as the BBC, well, trying to see if lightning could strike twice, because they'd had an enormous hit with EastEnders in the 10 years prior. 30 million viewers tuned in to the EastEnders Christmas special in 1986, which is kind of like, you know, Queen Elizabeth coronation numbers. But aside from a kind of audience ratings success, they were trying to justify at the time, as happens with the BBC every decade or so, why the government should continue funding the BBC. And one of the things they wanted to prove, really, in the charter renewal with the Conservative government at the time was they are relevant to a growing number of people. The only way you could show growth was by creating what, in non-BBC terms, you'd call a commercial hit. And they had an actual competition to see what was the best idea for a soap opera that could fill this slot 3 times a week, the old Terry Wogan slot on BBC One.
And it is a good idea. You know, the idea of Eldorado, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is a bunch of Brits abroad living in Spain, having fun times with a whole lot of European people who drop in and visit them.
That was the premise. Part of me thinks that that could have worked if they had stuck very strictly to the premise that it was going to be about British expats abroad. But then, according to some of the people behind the scenes, the commercial powers that be suddenly thought, well, wait a minute, we can sell this all over Europe if it's set in Spain, it's got international cast. So they pushed more European characters to the forefront, including some who weren't actually actors, and also on top of that, like, you know, their English wasn't necessarily the most natural.
Well, or they were speaking in the show in Spanish or German.
Yeah.
And so then that meant subtitles at 7 p.m. on BBC One, which the British audience just weren't ready for.
Yeah, but I think if they'd fully embraced it, I mean, look at the success of Benidorm. I mean, I know that is a sitcom, but like there's content to be mined from the concept of, you know, a little England, expats abroad, that kind of thing. It didn't help as well that the BBC was so desperate to get it out there, launched as soon as possible, that they pushed the production so hard that they apparently at points didn't have time to do second takes, which really does show in the acting.
I'm guessing, Rebecca, you've been on YouTube because you were 2 when this was on air. So this is not the memories of your first viewing, is it?
I watched the first episode on YouTube, and the sound design really does stand out. It's so incredibly echoey that it really just, it almost sounds like a raw footage documentary.
Yeah, exactly what you mean. It looks like behind the scenes footage, doesn't it? Like when someone's filmed it on a camcorder.
Yeah, and even though there were things that they corrected as they went along, actually the sound design wasn't one of them, because the only bit of this show that I've seen is the very end, that like literally the last scene.
So hold on, so Rebecca's seen the first ever episode and you've seen the last ever episode, and I'm the only person to watch an episode of Eldorado, is that right?
But the sound right at the end is woeful, so that's one of the things that they definitely didn't manage to fix.
Well, do you know the reason that the sound is terrible? They built a town in Spain to film the thing in. So the idea is this is Brits living in the Costa del Sol. It was a fictional town, Los Barcos, on the Costa Eldorado, which is really the Spanish town of Coen. But the point is they built all the sets for real. On the back of the success of EastEnders, which not until, I think, the last decade have they had high-definition permanent sets for that. On the back of EastEnders having shoddy sets from the beginning where the walls shook and stuff, and then it became this massively popular thing, they were like, let's build a proper set. Let's not film the interiors in a studio and then have to like do what they did in Neighbours and get a real street to be the exterior, because then you've got to keep asking for permission all the time. This is going to be a huge hit. Let's spend £2 million building a Spanish village. And that's what they did. So the swimming pool was real, the shop was real, the bar was real, all the apartments are actual apartments that they got Spanish contractors to build to look like a real Costa del Sol village. Except guess what? If you were going to build a town in the Costa del Sol, you'd need more than £2 million. Like £2 million is a lot for a soap opera set budget. It's not a lot to build a town.
That £2 million set didn't go entirely to waste, though, because it's now what I can only imagine to be one of Europe's most expensive paintballing destinations.
I mean, what an epic place to go paintballing. I've been when it was a studio tour when I was 10.
No.
Yeah. Long after the show ended, for about 10 years, British tourists could go and tour the Eldorado sets.
You must have been there anyway. You surely wouldn't have made that a destination that you set out to go to.
That is true. It turns out that if you take an autumn half-term break to Marbella, it's a bit of a risk with the weather then. So, mid-October, you do find yourself with not much else to do but tour the Eldorado sets on a rainy day. And it was interesting because some of the Spanish crew that had worked on the show were still there. I mean, they lived there, obviously. We're now working in this museum to Eldorado. And what was considered a massive flop for the BBC, i.e. it didn't get the 10 million viewers they wanted, it was averaging 2 million viewers for the first couple of months, it's still a hell of a load of people, like when you consider how many Brits go to Marbella on holiday. So it was enough to fund a proper tourist destination for quite a while.
Yeah, and I mean, by 1993, when the new BBC One controller, Alan Yentob, decided to pull the plug, the ratings had actually risen a lot to about 8 million, but it was kind of too little too late at that point. But there is a small but vocal fandom, of which you may or may not be a part, Olly, that continues to call for its revival.
I wouldn't call myself part of the fandom.
I'd call you vocal.
The thing is, though, you can say it was a huge flop, and obviously financially it was. 1 year, all right, that sounds bad, but that was still 156 episodes. It was going out 3 times a week.
Plus, a delegation actually marched on the BBC when the announcement came through that they were going to be cancelled. And people turned up. People physically turned up to say, we don't think that this show should be cancelled.
Yeah, but there were only 4 channels to choose from back then. I mean, really, I don't think that would happen now. I think it would have a cult following now. But that's the thing, you'd be able to track it now, wouldn't you? You'd be able to see on social media.
Perhaps there is an element of, tall poppy syndrome going on. Like, people love Neighbours in the UK, but that's Australians who I feel at some subconscious level we feel are entitled to live a life in the sun by the pool. And that maybe people really didn't have the ability to identify with these characters who were living in Spain. I mean, when I was watching it, and I think this is probably, residual lockdown trauma talking, I did feel good when I was watching those sun-soaked, shoddily constructed villas. I wonder if people just thought at the time that they genuinely couldn't identify with these people going and living in the sun.
Well, there was a good deal of Australian bitterness as well. According to Digital Spy, Rupert Murdoch was keen to buy Eldorado in the very early days, and because his efforts to acquire it were rebuffed, apparently he turned his tabloids' guns on it.
Right.
So it had this huge disadvantage right from the get-go because the tabloids were all slamming it and either refusing to review it or reviewing it badly.
If you could bring back any cancelled TV show, what would it be?
You bet. I mean, it's probably terrible, but it's what I watched every Saturday night when I was a child. It was Bruce Forsyth, or in latter years, Matthew Kelly, taking like a world record-breaking contestant. So someone would come on and they'd say, I can recite the incidental roads off the A127, just point at a map and I'll tell you what they are. And then the celebrity panel would say whether they thought he could or couldn't achieve this incredible aim, and bet money. And if he won the bet, he won the money as well as the record.
Sounds good. I think I'd bring back... well, this wasn't cancelled, but it just ended. But I think I'd bring back Press Gang, which was a classic Russell T Davies amazing show about kids running their own newspaper. Probably the thing that made me want to be a journalist in the first place.
That was my next question. You must be so disappointed that life isn't like Press Gang.
Oh my God. Life isn't like any journalism drama, unfortunately.
Actually, life as an expat is a bit like Eldorado. I mean, that's another reason why ultimately it probably failed, is that essentially life as an expat in the Costa del Sol is undramatic for soap purposes, isn't it? I mean, there is shagging going on, which they hint at. There is a little bit of soft money laundering, where'd you get that cash from? But it's not the business of full-blown soap opera, is it? With cars exploding and, people cheating on each other and young love. It doesn't really happen when a load of retirees go to Tenerife.
Rebecca, what would your show be?
It's actually another Julia Sawalha classic, Arion. When I was at uni, I became very emotionally dependent on watching Lark Rise to Candleford. And I feel like I watched each episode to death now. And with its tiny twists and turns, entire episodes will be about a shilling has gone missing from a letter, but then they find it again.
The sheep's dead, but it isn't.
A man comes to town. What's his secret? Oh, it's that he's an atheist and he's the new school teacher. That kind of storyline. And I'd love to regain that sense of peace all over again.
Tomorrow.
Do you believe the first woman was Eve? Do you really believe she was made out of Adam's rib?
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join CLUB RETROSPECTORS. Patreon.com/retrospectors.